There are moments in a child's life when innocence dies, not slowly, not peacefully, but violently, in the darkness of a house where screams echo and no one can hear them. Tommy was 9 years old when he realized something most adults never learn, that evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it sits at the dinner table. Sometimes it sleeps in the same bed as your mother. And sometimes the only way to survive is to beg strangers for murder. This is the story of a desperate whisper that changed everything. A story of a boy who had nothing left to lose, a group of unlikely angels on motorcycles, and one summer night in rural America when justice wore leather jackets and rode Harleys. Somewhere in rural Tennessee, 15 miles from the nearest town, there stood a weathered ranch house at the end of a dirt road. It was the kind of place people drove past without a second thought. Isolated, forgotten, perfect for someone who wanted to keep secrets. Tommy Henderson was 9 years old, but his eyes looked decades older. He lived in that house with his 14-year-old sister, Sarah, his mother, Linda, and the man who made their lives a living hell, Ray Mitchell. His stepfather, Ray, had entered their lives 2 years ago, shortly after Tommy's biological father died in a car accident. At first, he seemed like a savior, a strong man who could provide, protect. But the mask didn't last long. Within months, Ray's true nature emerged, violent, controlling, abusive. An alcoholic with a temper that exploded without warning, the abuse was systematic. Ray controlled everything, the money, the car keys, the phones. The house was miles from any neighbors, from any help. He had made his threats crystal clear to Tommy. If you ever tell anyone, boy, the police, a teacher, anyone, I will kill your mother and your sister right in front of you, and then I'll make sure you wish you died first. Tommy knew these weren't empty threats. He'd seen the pistol Ray kept in his bedroom drawer. He'd felt Ray's hands on him in ways no child should ever experience. The physical scars were hidden. The psychological ones ran deeper than any ocean. Sarah had retreated into herself, hair always covering part of her face, eyes always down. She never smiled anymore. Linda wore long sleeves even in summer heat, heavy makeup to cover bruises that bloomed purple and yellow across her skin. They had become ghosts in their own home, moving silently, carefully, trying not to trigger the monster that lurked in every room. But something was shifting in Tommy. A realization was growing. Dark and desperate, he was going to die there anyway. If he didn't fight, if he didn't do something, he would die in that house, far from everything and everyone, and no one would ever know what happened. The fear was being replaced by something more dangerous, hopelessness mixed with rage. On a scorching July afternoon, something unusual happened. Ray announced they were going out. They needed to refuel the car. For a family that rarely left the property, this was a rare glimpse of the outside world. The old Ford pickup rattled down the dirt road. Ray behind the wheel, Tommy squeezed in the middle, Linda in the passenger seat staring blankly ahead. Sarah sat in the truck bed, wind whipping her hair, preferring the open air to the suffocating interior with Ray. Ray pulled into a run-down gas station on Highway 64, one of those places with a single pump, a small convenience store, and nothing else for miles. As he stepped out to fuel up, he barked at Linda and Sarah, "Stay in the truck." They obeyed without a word, without even looking at each other. They had learned long ago that eye contact, conversation, any sign of connection between them enraged Ray. He wanted them isolated, even from each other. Ray finished pumping gas and turned to Tommy. "Boy, get inside and buy me a pack of Marlboro Reds. You've got 2 minutes." It was a test. Like everything with Ray, a test of obedience, of control, of fear. Tommy knew Ray would be watching him through the store's window, tracking his every movement. Tommy's heart pounded as he stepped into the convenience store, the bell above the door chiming. The air conditioning hit him like a different world. And then he saw them. motorcycles, dozens of them. Gleaming Harley-Davidsons lined up outside like metal cavalry. Inside the store, men covered in leather, tattoos, and road dust filled every corner. They were members of the Iron Brotherhood, a well-known motorcycle club from Memphis. 32 members on a summer ride through the back roads of Tennessee. 2 of them stood at the counter near the cash register, Bear and Hawk. They were massive men, 6'4" walls of muscle covered in ink. Bear had a thick beard and a scar running down his left cheek. Hawk was bald with eyes that had seen too much. They were getting coffee, joking with the cashier about the heat. Tommy approached the counter, his small frame barely reaching the top. His hands trembled as he spoke. "Pack of Marlboro Reds, please." His voice was barely above a whisper. The cashier nodded and turned to grab the cigarettes from behind him. Tommy could feel Ray's eyes burning through the window. He knew he had seconds. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the only chance he'd ever get. His heart felt like it was going to explode from his chest. A single tear began to roll down his cheek. He turned his head slightly, not enough for Ray to notice through the window, just enough to position himself toward Bear and Hawk. His jaw clenched. The words came out between gritted teeth, a sound that was part hatred, part agony, part desperate prayer. "Please, kill him. Kill my stepdad." The words hung in the air like smoke. Bear's hand froze mid-reach for his coffee cup. Hawk's eyes shifted down to the small boy beside them. The cashier, oblivious, turned back with the cigarettes. "That'll be $7.50. "Son." Tommy grabbed the pack with shaking hands, slapped a $10 bill on the counter, and walked out without waiting for change. He didn't look back. Couldn't look back. The tears were flowing freely now, and he had to hide them before reaching the truck. Inside the store, Bear and Hawk stood in silence. They exchanged a long, heavy look. No words were needed. They had both heard it. Every syllable, every ounce of desperation in that boy's voice. Tommy climbed back into the truck and handed Ray the cigarettes. Ray snatched them without a word, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. Tommy stared at his lap, watching tears drop onto his jeans, hoping desperately that Ray wouldn't notice, praying to a God he wasn't sure was listening, that those men had understood. Back in the gas station, Bear walked to the window and watched the Ford pickup disappear down the highway. Hawk came up beside him. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Bear's voice was low, gravelly. Hawk nodded slowly. "Let's see where they're headed, quiet-like." They walked out, climbed onto their bikes, and gestured subtly to Cole, their club president, a weathered man in his 50s with a gray beard and eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty. Cole had been watching the exchange. He gave a slight nod. Bear and Hawk peeled off from the group, keeping far back as the pickup headed deeper into the back roads. Bear and Hawk followed at a distance, careful to stay out of sight. The pickup turned off Highway 64 onto a narrow dirt road, then another turn, then finally pulled up to a dilapidated ranch house surrounded by nothing but fields and forest. The nearest neighbor had to be 5 miles away. Perfect isolation for someone hiding something terrible. The 2 bikers killed their engines half a mile back and coasted their Harleys into a cluster of trees off the main road. They dismounted silently. Men this size shouldn't be able to move so quietly, but years on the road had taught them stealth when needed. They approached the property on foot, using the tree line as cover. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the property. Through the windows, left open because of the oppressive heat and the lack of air conditioning, they could hear everything. Linda's voice, tired and defeated, Sarah's silence, Tommy's small footsteps, and Ray's voice, already slurred with alcohol despite it being only 7 in the evening. "Where the hell's my dinner? You think I work all day so you can sit on your lazy asses?" Bear pulled out a small 2-way radio and clicked it twice, a signal. Then he and Hawk settled in to watch. and to wait. They had a feeling this night wasn't over. Inside the house, hell was unfolding. Ray had finished a bottle of whiskey and was working on his second. The rage was building. Tommy could see it in his bloodshot eyes, in the way his jaw clenched, in the way his massive hands curled into fists. It started, as it always did, with something small. Linda had overcooked the potatoes. That was enough. Ray stood up from the dinner table, the chair scraping violently against the floor. "You can't even cook a goddamn potato?" Before Linda could respond, his fist connected with her jaw. She crumpled to the floor. Sarah screamed and ran to her room, the door slamming shut. Tommy froze at the table, his fork halfway to his mouth, watching in horror as Ray kicked his mother in the ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. Linda curled into a ball, whimpering, trying to protect her vital organs. Ray stormed into the kitchen to get another drink, leaving Linda gasping on the floor. Tommy knelt beside his mother. "Mom," he whispered. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. She looked at him with eyes that were somewhere between apologetic and dead. "Go to your room, baby, please." But Tommy couldn't move. Something inside him had snapped. A wire pulled too tight for too long had finally broken. He stood up. His small legs carried him down the hallway to Ray and Linda's bedroom. His hands, still shaking, but now with purpose instead of fear, opened the nightstand drawer. There it was, Ray's .38 caliber pistol, cold, heavy, real. Tommy had never held a gun before. It felt like holding death itself. He walked back to the living room. Ray was slumped in his chair, bottle in hand, mumbling to himself. Tommy raised the pistol with both hands, arms trembling under the weight, and aimed it directly at Ray's chest. The sound of the gun cocking made Ray's head snap up. His eyes went wide, then immediately narrowed with rage. But before he could stand, Linda threw herself between them. "Tommy, no." "Baby, no!" Her voice was raw, desperate. She positioned herself directly in the line of fire, arms spread wide, facing her son. Ray stood up slowly behind her, a sick smile spreading across his face. Well, well, the little boy thinks he's a man now. "You gonna shoot me, Tommy? Huh? You got the guts?" His voice was mocking, cruel. He took a step forward. Linda pressed back against him, preventing him from advancing. "Tommy, please, please put the gun down," she begged. But Tommy didn't lower it. The dam had broken. Years of silence came pouring out. "He touches me. He hurts Sarah. He beats you every night. Why don't you leave him? Why don't you call the police? I hate him. I hate him." Tears streamed down his face, but his arms didn't waver. For the first time in 2 years, Tommy was saying everything out loud. Every horrible truth, every nightmare. Outside, pressed against the house beneath the window, Bear and Hawk heard every word. Bear's jaw clenched so hard his teeth should have cracked. Hawk's hand reached for the radio. Inside, Ray's voice shifted, became smooth, predatory. "Tommy, son, put the gun down. I promise nothing's gonna happen. We'll talk about this. Man to man, just give the gun to your mama." Linda turned to her son, tears pouring down her swollen face. "Baby, listen to me. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting you. You're 9 years old. If you do this, you'll never be the same. He'll have taken something from you that you can never get back. Don't let him take your soul, too. Please, please, baby." "Give me the gun." Tommy's arms began to shake harder. He was 9. He was so tired. He looked at his mother's face, at the love and desperation there, at the woman who had tried so hard to shield him and failed. Slowly, agonizingly, he lowered the pistol. Linda rushed forward and took it from his hands, holding it like it was a venomous snake. For about 3 seconds, there was silence. Then Ray moved. He lunged forward, grabbed Tommy by the arm so hard the boy screamed in pain, and began dragging him toward the basement door. "You think you can threaten me in my own house, you little piece of garbage? I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget." Linda tried to grab Ray's arm. He backhanded her across the face without even looking, sending her sprawling. The pistol clattered across the floor. Sarah's door opened a crack. She watched in frozen horror as Ray dragged her little brother toward the basement steps. Tommy was screaming, crying, clawing at Ray's iron grip. "Mom, Mom, please!" But Ray was too strong. He kicked open the basement door and began hauling the boy down the stairs into the darkness. "No one's going to save you now, boy. No one." And then the world exploded with sound. The sound started low, like distant thunder. Then it grew and grew. A deep primal roar of engines. Not one, not two, dozens. The house began to vibrate. Pictures rattled on the walls. Glasses shook in the cabinets. Windows trembled in their frames. Ray froze on the basement stairs, Tommy still in his grip. What the hell? He dropped the boy and ran back up to the living room, rushing to the window. His face went white. 30 Harley-Davidson motorcycles surrounded the property in a perfect circle, headlights blazing through the twilight like spotlights. The Iron Brotherhood had arrived in full force. The sound of their engines idling in unison was like the breathing of some massive, angry beast. Ray's mind raced. He needed his gun. He spun around to look for the pistol Linda had dropped, but it wasn't there. Before he could process that, the back door exploded inward. Bear and Hawk filled the doorway like avenging demons. They had been waiting for this moment. They'd heard everything through the open windows. The abuse. The threats. Tommy's broken voice begging to be saved. "Remember us?" Bear's voice was quiet, deadly. "From the gas station?" Ray backed up, hands raised. "Look, I don't know what that kid told you, but—" He didn't finish. Hawk moved with shocking speed for a man his size and grabbed Ray by the throat, slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the drywall. "We didn't come to talk." What followed was brutal, calculated. Bear and Hawk took turns. Every punch was for a bruise on Linda's face. Every kick for a nightmare Sarah would never forget. Every blow for the innocence stolen from Tommy. They didn't kill him. They had discipline, control, but they made sure Ray felt every ounce of pain he'd inflicted on that family, multiplied tenfold. Linda, Sarah, and Tommy watched from the corners of the room. They didn't scream, didn't protest, didn't look away. For the first time in 2 years, they saw the monster bleed, saw him beg, saw him helpless. And something in each of them began, slowly, to uncurl from its protective position. After what felt like hours, but was probably 5 minutes, Bear and Hawk stopped. Ray lay on the floor, conscious but broken, blood pooling beneath him, wheezing through what might have been broken ribs. Bear looked around and spotted the pistol under the couch. He picked it up, checked the chamber, and tucked it into his belt. Hawk crouched down next to Ray's battered face. "Listen real careful, because I'm only saying this once. This is your gun. Want it back? Come get it from us. We're at the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse outside Memphis. You know the place. Come by any time." The message was clear. If Ray was stupid enough to show his face, he wouldn't leave alive. At that moment, the front door opened. Cole, the club president, stepped inside, flanked by 4 more members. He took in the scene with practiced eyes. The beaten man on the floor, the traumatized family in the corners, his 2 members standing guard. He walked slowly to Linda, who was still on the floor, shaking. Cole knelt down to her eye level. His voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly gentle. "Ma'am, you've got a choice to make tonight. You can let this piece of trash stay in your life, or you can be done with him. Right now. We'll make sure he doesn't come back. But you got to make the call." Linda looked at him, then at Tommy, then at Sarah. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something she thought was dead. Agency. She nodded slowly, tears streaming. "Get him out. Please, get him out of my house." Cole stood and looked at Ray. "You heard the lady. You've got 10 minutes to pack your shit and get out. If you're still here after that, we'll be back. And next time, we won't be so friendly." 2 club members hauled Ray to his feet and shoved him toward the bedroom. He stumbled, clutching his ribs, shooting hateful looks at everyone but saying nothing. He knew he had lost, Bear walked over to Tommy, who was still on the basement stairs, eyes wide with shock. The massive biker knelt down on one knee and looked the boy in the eyes. "You're safe now, kid. You understand? No one's going to hurt you again. Not him. Not anybody. You did good. You were brave. Braver than most men I know." Tommy's lower lip trembled. He couldn't speak. Bear reached out and put a huge calloused hand on the boy's shoulder, a gesture that was both protective and affirming. 10 minutes later, Ray threw a duffel bag into his pickup truck and sped off into the night, taillights disappearing down the dirt road. The sound of the Harley starting up again filled the air, but this time it sounded different to Tommy. Not threatening, almost comforting, like thunder that clears the air. Cole handed Linda a card with a phone number. "You call that if he comes back. You call that if you need anything. Lawyer, shelter, protection, anything. We take care of our own, and as of tonight, you're under our protection." Linda took the card with shaking hands and whispered, "Thank you." "Thank you." 3 weeks later, Ray Mitchell was arrested at a motel in Arkansas. Linda had finally gone to the police with Tommy and Sarah. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, photographs, testimonies. Ray was charged with multiple counts of child abuse, domestic violence, and aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Linda filed for divorce, which was granted immediately due to the circumstances. With help from a pro bono lawyer connected through the Iron Brotherhood, she also secured full custody and a permanent restraining order. The family moved to a small house in town. Nothing fancy, but it had neighbors, streetlights, and most importantly, it wasn't isolated. It wasn't a prison. On a Saturday morning in August, the sound of motorcycles rolled up to their new address. Sarah peeked through the curtains and smiled, the first real smile she'd had in years. "Mom, they're here." Tommy ran to the door before Linda could even respond. Outside, Cole, Bear, Hawk, and a dozen other Iron Brotherhood members stood by their bikes. Engines rumbling, Cole stepped forward holding something, a leather jacket, small, clearly custom-made for a child. On the back was a patch that read, "Honorary Member, Iron Brotherhood," with a small angel wing stitched beside it. "Every brotherhood needs to protect the innocent," Cole said, his gruff voice softening. "You're one of us now, Tommy. Always will be." Tommy took the jacket with trembling hands and slipped it on. It fit perfectly. He looked up at these massive, tattooed, intimidating men and saw them for what they truly were. The angels who had answered a desperate prayer whispered in a gas station. The ones who didn't turn away when a 9-year-old boy begged for help in the only way he knew how. Bear ruffled Tommy's hair. "You ever need anything, kid, and I mean anything, you call us. Got it?" Tommy nodded, a genuine smile breaking across his face for the first time in what felt like forever. "Got it." As the motorcycles roared to life and pulled away, Linda stood on the porch with her arms around both her children. Sarah leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. Tommy waved until the bikers disappeared around the corner. The sound of their engines faded into the distance, but the protection they represented remained. A promise, a shield, a family forged not by blood, but by a moment of desperate courage, and the unlikely heroes who answered the call. Some angels wear halos, others wear leather and ride Harleys, and sometimes, when evil thinks it has won, those angels come roaring out of the darkness with engines that sound like justice itself.